The Christmas lights had barely stopped blinking when the truth tore my family apart. I stood frozen in the living room, my breath caught in my throat as the fire crackled behind me. Everyone was gathered around the long wooden table, pretending to be a happy family. Then came the moment. The secret that had been hidden for years spilled into the open. My mother's hands shook as she dropped her wine glass, the red liquid staining the white tablecloth like blood. My brother Daniel's face twisted with rage, and my sister Emily gasped as if someone had ripped the air from her lungs. And me? I just stood there, silent, watching the very people who once treated me like the outsider finally burn under the weight of their own lies. Because on that Christmas night, their secret didn't just break them. It destroyed them. And the cruelest part? I was the one who set the fire that lit their destruction. But you want to know how it all happened, don't you? Don't blink. Don't look away. Because once I begin, you'll understand why I couldn't stop, why revenge became my only language. Before I take you back to where it all started, make sure you like, watch, and subscribe because this is just the beginning, and trust me, you'll want to hear how it ends. My name is Sarah Mitchell, the unwanted daughter of the Mitchell family. At least, that's what I always felt like growing up. My family looked perfect from the outside. My father, Richard, was a successful businessman. My mother, Margaret, was the picture of grace, always dressed in pearls and heels, smiling like she had it all. My siblings, Daniel and Emily, were the golden children. Daniel was the star athlete, Emily the beauty queen. And me? I was just there. It was as if my birth was an inconvenience no one wanted to acknowledge. At family dinners, my words floated unheard. At school, no one came to my games or clapped for me when I sang. Every Christmas, every Thanksgiving, every birthday, I got the same cheap scarf while Daniel and Emily unwrapped iPhones, cars, vacations. And yet I loved them. That's the sad part. I loved them enough to keep trying, hoping one day they'd see me, hoping one day they'd treat me like I belonged. But life doesn't hand outsiders miracles, it hands them knives. Things started to change the night I was 17. My father had just come home late from one of his business trips. I remember standing at the top of the stairs, my heart pounding, because I heard my parents arguing. "You promised me, Richard," my mother hissed. "We agreed to bury it forever. If she finds out..." "She won't," my father snapped. "She's too naive. She'll never question anything." I didn't know then what they meant. But those words carved themselves into my memory, whispering to me year after year. If she finds out, she won't. Too naive. From then on, I started noticing things. The way my parents froze when I walked into the room. The way my siblings looked at me when they thought I wasn't paying attention, like I was a stranger who didn't belong in their world. By the time I turned 21, I had already decided one thing. If there was a secret, I would find it. And when I did, I wouldn't just expose it. I'd make sure it destroyed them the way they destroyed me. I began digging. Late nights in my father's study, reading through old files, sneaking into my mother's jewelry box where she hid letters, whispering questions to neighbors who thought they were gossiping harmlessly. And slowly, piece by piece, the puzzle started to form. What I found made my stomach twist and my hands shake. It wasn't just a family secret, it was the kind of secret that could ruin lives, send people to prison, maybe even end in blood. And I realized then, my family didn't just push me aside. They pushed me aside to protect themselves. I was never meant to know the truth. But once I did, I couldn't stop. Revenge is like a fire. You think you're the one controlling it, but in the end, it controls you. And it controlled me all the way to that Christmas night when I set everything in motion. But before I tell you what I uncovered, let me take you back to the first domino that fell. It was Thanksgiving 2 years ago. We were all sitting around the table, pretending to be grateful. My father carved the turkey. Daniel bragged about his promotion. Emily showed off her diamond ring. And me? I was invisible. Until the phone rang. And when I picked it up, the voice on the other end changed everything. "Sarah," the voice whispered, "I know who you really are. And if you want answers, meet me tonight. Come alone." The line went dead. My hand trembled as I placed the receiver back. I looked around the table. My parents were laughing, my siblings were smiling, but I saw it. The flicker of panic in my mother's eyes as she realized I had answered that call. That was the moment everything shifted. That was the moment the secret began to unravel. And that night, when I showed up at the meeting place, I learned something that made my knees buckle.
My family wasn't my family at all.
The wind cut across my face as I stood outside the old train station on the edge of town. It was nearly midnight, and the air smelled of rust and wet concrete. My heart thudded like a drum in my chest. I kept asking myself, why am I even here? But the voice on that phone, it had been too certain, too dangerous to ignore. Then I saw her. A woman stepped out from the shadows. Her coat was torn, her eyes tired, her hair streaked with gray. She looked like she had been running her whole life. "Sarah," she whispered, scanning my face like she was memorizing every detail. "Yes," I managed to say, my voice barely audible. She took a shaky breath. "You don't know me, but you should. I'm your mother. Your real mother." The ground tilted under my feet. I wanted to laugh, to scream, to run. "That's impossible," I said. "My mother is Margaret Mitchell." Her eyes hardened. "Margaret stole you. Stole you from me." My blood went cold. I wanted to deny it, to call her crazy, but then she pulled something from her bag, a hospital bracelet, faded and cracked, with my name written on it. And not just my name. My real name. Sarah Johnson. I staggered back. My lungs couldn't find air. "What are you saying?" I croaked. Her voice broke as she explained. "When you were a baby, I was poor, desperate. I worked as a nurse at the hospital. Richard and Margaret came to me, begging to adopt you. But when I refused, she swallowed hard. They took you. They had the money, the power. And I had nothing. I tried to fight. I went to the police, the courts, but they buried me. Buried me like I never existed. And you grew up thinking you were theirs." My body shook. Every moment of neglect, every cruel word, every empty Christmas gift suddenly made sense. I wasn't blood. I wasn't theirs. I was property they stole. "Why are you telling me this now?" I whispered, tears burning my eyes. Her face twisted with grief. "Because you're old enough to fight back. And because there's more. They didn't just steal you, Sarah. They destroyed me. And I can prove it."
I didn't sleep that night.
Her words replayed in my mind like a broken record. By morning, I knew one thing for sure. My life was a lie, and my family had built their empire on secrets buried so deep, they thought no one would ever dig them up. But I was digging. And I wasn't going to stop. The next weeks were a blur of shadows and whispers. I met with her again and again, each time uncovering pieces of the story. Documents, photographs, hospital records, all hidden, all damning. My perfect father and graceful mother weren't saints. They were thieves, liars, criminals. And the more I learned, the more my anger grew. Every insult from Emily, every slap on the back Daniel got from Dad, every time Mom looked through me like I didn't exist, it was all because I didn't belong. They knew it. They always knew it. But now I knew it too. And I was ready to make them pay. The first time I confronted Margaret, it was subtle. Over breakfast, she poured her coffee, smiling in that fake way she always did. "Mom," I said softly, "where was I born?" Her hand froze midair. For a split second, her mask slipped, and I saw the truth in her eyes. "At St. Mary's, darling." "Why do you ask?" she said too quickly, her voice too smooth. I smiled, hiding my rage. "Just curious."
Inside, though, I knew
she was lying. By Christmas Eve, I had everything ready. Copies of the documents, photographs, a recording of my real mother's confession. I even uncovered worse. Margaret and Richard had framed my real mother for a crime she didn't commit, sending her to jail for 3 years while they raised me as their own. They destroyed her life. And they thought they could destroy mine. But this Christmas, I was going to turn the tables. That night, as the snow fell outside, I walked into the Mitchell home with my head held high. The smell of cinnamon filled the air, the tree glittered with lights, Daniel and Emily laughed like the world belonged to them. And Richard sat in his armchair, like a king on his throne. None of them knew that I was holding their downfall in my bag. Dinner was served, wine poured, carols played softly in the background. I waited for the perfect moment. Then, as Daniel raised a toast, I stood up. "I have something to say," I announced, my voice steady, but burning with fire. All eyes turned to me. Richard frowned. Margaret's smile faltered. Emily rolled her eyes. And that was when I pulled the first photograph out of my bag and placed it on the table. The picture of me as a baby, wrapped in my real mother's arms. Margaret's face went pale. Richard dropped his fork. "This," I said coldly, "is the truth you've been hiding." The room went dead silent. And then, Margaret screamed. Margaret's scream sliced through the room like glass shattering. The wine glasses rattled, the fire hissed, and for a moment, nobody moved. Emily's jaw dropped. Daniel's face twisted in confusion. And Richard, my so-called father, gripped the edge of the table, his knuckles white. "What is this?" Emily whispered, staring at the photo. My voice trembled, but I held steady. "That's me, with my real mother, the woman you all tried to erase." Margaret shook her head violently. No, this is a lie. She's lying." Her voice cracked, almost hysterical. I pulled out the hospital bracelet next. "Does this look like a lie to you?" "Sarah Johnson. That's the name I was given before you stole me." Daniel leaned back in his chair, his brows furrowing. "Stole you? Mom, Dad, what is she talking about?" I looked him dead in the eye. "She's talking about how they kidnapped me. How they destroyed my real mother's life to keep me." The air in the room grew heavy. I could almost feel the weight of truth pressing down on all of us. Richard finally spoke, his voice deep, commanding. "Enough." His eyes locked onto me, cold and sharp. "Whatever game you're playing ends now." But I wasn't afraid anymore. I reached into my bag again and pulled out the stack of documents, scattering them across the table. Birth records, police reports, court filings. Proof that Margaret and Richard weren't the flawless parents they pretended to be, but criminals hiding behind wealth and power. Emily gasped. Daniel swore under his breath. And Margaret's hands trembled as she reached for one of the documents, her face draining of color. This isn't true," she whispered, though her voice sounded hollow, like she didn't even believe her own words. I leaned forward, my voice cutting through the silence. "It's all true. And tonight, everyone at this table will know who you really are." That was when Richard slammed his fist on the table so hard the plates jumped. "Enough," he roared. "You think you can waltz in here, ruin this family with your delusions? You're nothing, Sarah. You've always been nothing." His words should have broken me. Once, they would have. But now? They only fueled the fire. "Nothing," I hissed. "If I'm nothing, then why did you steal me? Why did you ruin an innocent woman's life to have me?" Richard froze. His face, once so composed, twisted into something darker, more dangerous. For the first time, I saw the man behind the mask, the man who would destroy anyone who stood in his way. And suddenly, I knew I wasn't just dealing with lies. I was dealing with monsters. Emily's voice broke the silence. "Mom, Dad, tell me it isn't true." Margaret's lips quivered, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Emily, please." But Daniel shot up from his chair, his face red with fury. "You lied to us? Our whole lives." Richard stood too, towering over us. "Sit down, Daniel. All of you. This conversation is over." But it wasn't over. It was only beginning. Because that was the moment I pulled out my last weapon, a small voice recorder. I pressed play, and my real mother's voice filled the room. "They stole her from me. Margaret and Richard Mitchell. They ruined me, destroyed me, and made her believe she was theirs. But she's mine. She's my daughter." The sound of her voice cracked something open in the room. Margaret collapsed into her chair, sobbing uncontrollably. Emily covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Daniel shook his head like he couldn't process it. And Richard's face turned to stone. His jaw clenched. His fists tightened. He looked at me like he could kill me with his bare hands. "You don't know what you've done," he said, his voice low, dangerous. I met his glare without flinching. "No, Richard. You don't know what I'm about to do." That was when the front door burst open. The sharp crack of cold air swept in, and standing in the doorway was a figure that froze everyone in place. It was her, my real mother. She stepped inside slowly, her eyes locking on Margaret first, then Richard. And in that moment, I swear the whole house held its breath. Emily whispered, "Oh my God." Margaret let out a strangled cry. No, no, it can't be. But it was. Flesh and blood. The woman they tried to erase. The woman they destroyed. And now, she was standing in their house. The silence shattered as she spoke, her voice steady, but filled with fire. "You thought you buried me, but I'm still here. And tonight, the truth will bury you." The room froze like time itself had stopped. The fire crackled, the Christmas lights twinkled, but no one breathed. My real mother stood tall in the doorway, her shadow stretching across the living room, her presence heavier than any storm I'd ever known. Margaret's sobs turned into gasps. How did you get in here?" My real mother's eyes were ice. "The same way you got into my life. Uninvited." Richard straightened, his face a mask of fury. "You don't belong here. Leave before I call the police." She laughed, a bitter, broken laugh that echoed through the house. "The police? The same ones you paid off to silence me? The same system you twisted to take my daughter from me? Go ahead, Richard.
Call them."
I've been waiting for this moment for 21 years. My chest heaved as I looked between them. This was it, the showdown I had unknowingly been walking toward my entire life. Daniel finally spoke, his voice cracking. "Is this true? All of it? Mom? Dad? Did you really?" "Daniel, enough." Richard snapped, his tone sharp as a whip. But Emily turned to him too, tears streaming. "No, don't you dare silence him. We deserve the truth." The perfect Mitchell family image was crumbling right before my eyes, and for once, I wasn't the outsider. They were. They were the liars, the thieves, the criminals. My real mother's gaze softened as it fell on me. "Sarah," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I never stopped looking for you. They told me you'd forgotten me, that you were better off without me. But you were my little girl. You'll always be my little girl." Something inside me cracked. For years, I had begged for love, begged for belonging, only to be ignored, dismissed, erased. And here she was, the woman who had been robbed of me, offering me what I'd been denied all along. Margaret slammed her fist on the table, her voice wild. "You don't deserve her. You couldn't even take care of her. You were nothing but a broken, desperate woman, Richard, and I gave her a life you never could." I whipped my head toward her, my rage boiling over. "A life? You call this a life? You raised me to feel like garbage. To feel invisible. To feel like I didn't matter." My voice cracked, the years of pain spilling out. "She may have been poor, but she loved me. That's more than you ever gave me." Margaret's face twisted, her hands shaking. "I did what I had to do." "No," my real mother cut in sharply. "You did what you wanted to do. And you destroyed me in the process." Richard moved then, his face red with rage. He stormed around the table, pointing a finger at my real mother. "You will not come into my house and accuse us of crimes we didn't commit. You were unstable. You were unfit. We saved Sarah from you. But she didn't flinch. Saved her? You kidnapped her. And I have the proof." The words detonated in the room. My siblings froze. Margaret gasped. And Richard's eyes darkened in a way that made the hair on my neck stand. I reached into my bag and placed the last folder on the table. Inside, signed statements, forged adoption papers, bank transactions showing bribes. And worst of all, a recording Richard didn't know I had, of him admitting to Margaret years ago that burying that woman was the only way to keep Sarah. Emily picked up one of the documents, her hands trembling. "Dad, tell me this isn't real." But Richard said nothing. His silence was louder than any confession. That was when Daniel exploded. He grabbed Richard by the collar, shaking him violently. "You ruined us. You ruined everything." "Daniel," Margaret screamed, trying to pull him off. But then Richard snapped. In a blur of movement, he shoved Daniel backward so hard that Daniel crashed into the Christmas tree. Ornaments shattered across the floor. The star toppled. Lights went dark. Emily screamed. Margaret cried out. And I stood frozen, staring at the man who wasn't just a liar, but violent. Dangerous. My real mother's voice cut through the chaos, low and steady. "You can't hide anymore, Richard. The truth is out. And soon, everyone will know." Richard turned on her, his chest heaving, his eyes wild. "If you think you can destroy me, you're wrong. I built this family. I built this empire. And I will bury anyone who threatens it." The room shook with his rage. And then, suddenly, the sound of sirens pierced the night. Red and blue lights flashed through the window. Tires screeched on the driveway. The police were here. The sound of sirens tore through the night, louder and louder, until the house glowed with red and blue. Every head snapped toward the window. Every heart stopped beating for a second. Then came the pounding.
Bam, bam, bam.
"Police! Open up." Margaret's face went white. Richard's jaw locked. Emily was sobbing, clutching Daniel's arm as he struggled to get back on his feet from where the Christmas tree had collapsed. Richard turned to me, his eyes burning like fire. "What did you do?" I lifted my chin. "I didn't call them, but maybe the truth finally did." Margaret scrambled toward the door, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor.
"Wait."
"Don't open it." But it was too late. The door burst wide, and 3 officers stormed in, guns drawn, their flashlights sweeping the room. "Hands where we can see them," one of them barked. The sight of Richard Mitchell, the mighty businessman, the man who acted untouchable, raising his trembling hands in front of his children was a moment I'll never forget. "What is going on here?" Emily sobbed. "Why are they here?" The lead officer stepped forward, his voice steady. "We have a warrant for the arrest of Richard Mitchell and Margaret Mitchell. Charges include fraud, bribery, and unlawful adoption." The words hit the room like a bomb. Margaret screamed, stumbling backward. Richard roared in protest. "This is insane. You have no idea who I am. I'll bury all of you for this." The officer didn't flinch. He grabbed Richard by the arm, twisting it behind his back as he snapped the cuffs on. Richard fought, his face turning red, veins bulging from his neck. "You think you can destroy me? Do you know how many people owe me their careers? Their lives?" But his power meant nothing now. Margaret collapsed onto her knees, clutching at the hem of her silk dress.
"Please."
"Please don't do this. I have children. I was only trying to protect them." "Protect them?" My real mother spat, stepping forward. "You destroyed them. You destroyed me." The officer grabbed Margaret by the wrists, locking the cuffs. She cried out, her pearls snapping from her neck and scattering across the floor like broken promises. Emily wailed, her hands pressed against her face. Daniel cursed under his breath, pacing wildly, his eyes darting between his parents and the officers. I stood there, watching it all. My chest was heavy, my eyes stung, but I didn't look away. This was the justice I had dreamed of, the revenge I had craved. And yet, it didn't feel like victory. It felt like ashes. Because no matter what, these were the people who had raised me, who had shaped me, even if through cruelty and neglect. Watching them dragged away in handcuffs was both the sweetest and the bitterest moment of my life. As the officers pulled Richard and Margaret toward the door, Richard twisted back to glare at me. His voice was low, venomous, filled with a promise. "This isn't over, Sarah. I will come back for you. And when I do, you'll regret everything." His words slithered into my bones, chilling me even as the officers shoved him outside. The door slammed shut behind them. The sirens wailed again as the police cars pulled away, carrying my so-called parents into the night. For a long time, silence filled the house. Emily sat on the floor, rocking back and forth, whispering no, 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 over and over. Daniel punched the wall so hard his knuckles bled, his breath ragged. And me? I stood between two worlds, the family that had stolen me and destroyed me, and the mother who had just walked back into my life. My real mother reached for my hand, her touch trembling but warm. "It's over, Sarah. You're free now." But I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. Because deep inside, I knew she was wrong. It wasn't over. It was only just beginning. And I was right, because less than 24 hours later, the phone rang. When I picked it up, a chilling voice greeted me. "You think the truth set you free? You have no idea what you've started." The line went dead. The phone slipped from my hand, crashing to the floor. My heart thundered in my chest as the words echoed in my ears. "You have no idea what you've started." I stood frozen in the middle of the living room, the Christmas tree still toppled, shattered ornaments crunching under my feet. Emily sat on the couch, hollow-eyed, while Daniel nursed his bloodied knuckles with a dish towel. My real mother hovered near me, her expression tense. "Sarah?" she asked gently. "Who was it?" I swallowed hard, forcing the words out. Someone said this isn't over." Her face darkened, and I could see the fear flicker in her eyes. "Richard," she whispered. "It has to be. He has people. Connections. Even in jail, he can reach you." Daniel shot up, his face pale. "Are you saying Dad called from lockup? That's impossible." "No," my mother said firmly. "Not impossible. He's always known how to bend the rules. Don't underestimate him." The weight of her words pressed down on me. I wanted to believe the nightmare had ended when the police took them away. But deep inside, I knew Richard Mitchell wasn't a man who would go quietly. He was a man who would scorch the earth before letting anyone win. That night, sleep didn't come. Every creak of the house, every shadow outside the window, made my skin crawl. I replayed his last words to me before the handcuffs clamped on. "This isn't over, Sarah. You'll regret everything." Morning came with no peace. Instead, the headlines screamed across every paper and TV screen. "Richard Mitchell, business tycoon, arrested on fraud and kidnapping charges. Socialite Margaret Mitchell accused in unlawful adoption scandal." The world finally knew the truth. But instead of feeling vindicated, I felt exposed, like every eye in the city was on me. Some with pity, some with judgment, some with hate. Emily couldn't bear it. "Do you know what this has done to me?" she cried, slamming her phone onto the counter. "Everyone's texting me, calling me, asking if it's true. I can't even go online without people saying our whole family's a fraud." Daniel's anger boiled over. "Don't you get it, Emily? We are a fraud. Mom and Dad made sure of that." "Shut up," she screamed back. "Just shut up." Their voices clashed like thunder, filling the house with chaos. And I stood there, my hands shaking, my eyes burning. For once, they weren't pointing the blame at me. They were blaming each other. The golden children were crumbling. But the phone call wouldn't leave my head. "You have no idea what you've started." By noon, I decided to leave the house. I needed air, space, anything to clear the fog pressing on my chest. My mother insisted on coming with me, her protective gaze never leaving me. We walked through town, the whispers following us everywhere. Strangers stopped to stare. Some whispered behind their hands. Others pointed outright. I caught pieces of it. "That's her, the stolen girl, the Mitchell scandal." It cut deep, but I kept walking. I had endured worse. Then, just as we turned a corner, a black SUV slowed to a crawl beside us. My stomach knotted instantly. The window rolled down, and a man in a dark suit leaned out, his eyes sharp, his smile thin. "Sarah Mitchell?" he asked smoothly, though the sound of my name on his lips made my blood run cold. I didn't answer. He handed me a small envelope through the open window. "From your father. He wanted you to have this." Before I could react, the SUV sped off, tires screeching, disappearing down the street. I stood frozen, the envelope heavy in my hands. My mother's face had gone pale. "Sarah, don't open it." But I couldn't stop myself. My fingers tore through the flap, my breath shallow, my heart pounding. Inside was a single piece of paper. On it were 6 words, written in my father's handwriting. Blood for blood. Family for family. The paper slipped from my hands as a scream built in my throat. My vision blurred, my body shook. He wasn't threatening me.
He was threatening them.
Emily, Daniel, even my real mother, Richard Mitchell, was declaring war. And before I could even process it, my phone buzzed again. A text message. No name. Just a number I didn't recognize. It read, "Tonight. Midnight. The place you first learned the truth. Come alone, or they pay the price." The world tilted under me, and I knew I was walking straight into his game. The text message glowed on my phone screen like a curse. "Tonight. Midnight. The place you first learned the truth. Come alone, or they pay the price." My hands trembled as I read it again and again, the weight of those words pressing down on me. The old train station. The place where I had met my real mother. The place where the secret was first revealed. He was dragging me back to the beginning, to the place where everything had started. My real mother tried to snatch the phone from my hand. "You're not going, Sarah. It's a trap." That's exactly what he wants. "I don't have a choice," I whispered, my voice breaking. "If I don't go, he'll hurt them. Emily, Daniel, even you. I can't let that happen." Tears welled in her eyes. "He's a dangerous man. He doesn't care who he destroys. He'll use your love for them against you." And that was the truth. Richard Mitchell thrived on control. And tonight, he wanted to prove that even from the shadows, even from behind bars or beyond bars, he still owned us. As night fell, the hours crawled by. Emily locked herself in her room, crying into her pillow. Daniel disappeared outside, pacing the driveway like a caged animal. My real mother stayed close to me, begging me to change my mind. But by 11:30, I knew what I had to do. I slipped out quietly, my bag slung over my shoulder. Inside, I carried copies of every piece of evidence I had gathered, because if tonight was going to end in fire, I wasn't leaving without a way to burn him down completely. The drive to the train station was a blur of flashing streetlights and the hum of the car engine. My chest rose and fell with shaky breaths, my hands gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. When I arrived, the station loomed like a ghost, abandoned and forgotten, just like the truth had been for so many years. The broken windows stared down at me like empty eyes. The wind whistled through the cracked beams, carrying the faint smell of rust and decay. And then I saw it. A single light flickered inside. I stepped out of the car, my boots crunching on gravel, the envelope with his threat still in my pocket. My heart pounded so hard it drowned out every other sound. Inside the station, the light swung from a single bulb hanging by a wire. And under that dim glow stood Richard Mitchell. Not in an orange jumpsuit, not in handcuffs, but in a black coat, his presence larger than life, his smile cold and sharp. "Hello, Sarah," he said, his voice calm, almost casual. "I knew you'd come."
My mouth went dry.
How are you even here? You were arrested." He chuckled, shaking his head. "Money, power, favors owed, jail is just a door. And doors can always be opened." I felt my stomach twist. He wasn't bluffing. He really had slipped out of their grasp. "You sent me that threat," I said, my voice trembling but steady enough. "What do you want from me?" His eyes narrowed, his smile fading. "I want you to understand something. You think you've won. You think exposing me, humiliating me, tearing this family apart gives you power. But you're wrong. You'll never be free of me. Because I am in your blood, in your mind. And as long as you care about them, Emily, Daniel, that woman you call your mother, I own you." Rage bubbled inside me, but fear wrapped around it like chains. He was right. He had always known where to hit hardest. "Why?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Why me? Why did you take me? Why ruin everything?" His gaze hardened. "Because you were the perfect pawn. Margaret wanted a child she could mold. I wanted control. And you." He stepped closer, his shadow stretching across the floor. "You were disposable."
A tool.
Nothing more. My breath caught. The years of neglect, of being invisible, suddenly had a name. Disposable. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I straightened, my hands curling into fists. You're wrong. I'm not disposable. I'm the one who ended you. His smile returned, colder than ever.
No, Sarah.
You've only begun a war you can't finish. And then he snapped his fingers. From the shadows, two men stepped out. Big, broad, faces hidden under black hoods. My stomach dropped. Meet the insurance policy, Richard said calmly. You thought I'd come here alone? The men moved toward me, their heavy boots echoing in the hollow space. My heart raced. My mind screamed. I was trapped. But then, suddenly, a voice rang out from behind me. Let her go. I spun around. My real mother stood at the entrance, a gun shaking in her hands, her eyes blazing with fury. The two men froze. Richard's smile faltered. And in that moment I realized this wasn't just my fight anymore. It was hers too. The gun trembled in my mother's hands, but her voice was strong. Step away from her, Richard. You've taken enough from me. From both of us. Richard chuckled, tilting his head like a man amused by a child's tantrum. Margaret's little replacement, he sneered. You really think you can stop me with that? I made you both. I can destroy you both. The two men in hoods shifted uneasily, glancing between Richard and the barrel of the gun. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would shatter my ribs. My mother took one step forward. You don't get to decide anymore. Tonight it ends. And then chaos exploded. One of the men lunged, grabbing for the gun. My mother fired. Bang. The shot echoed through the hollow station, shards of glass raining down from the ceiling. The man screamed, clutching his arm as he collapsed to the floor. The second man rushed toward me. I swung my bag with all my strength, the stack of evidence inside striking his face. He staggered back, dazed. My adrenaline surged. I had never fought anyone before, but tonight, survival left me no choice. Richard stood still, watching it unfold, his smile gone, replaced by pure rage. You'll regret this, Sarah. You think a few papers, a scared woman, and a gun will erase me? I'll haunt you until your last breath. Not tonight. I spat, my voice shaking but louder than I'd ever heard it. My mother turned the gun on him, her hands steady now, her eyes unblinking. For a moment, I thought she would pull the trigger and end it right there. But instead, she tossed the gun to the ground and pulled out something else. My phone. She waved it at him. Every word you just said, recorded. The threats, the confession, everything. Sent to the police already. Richard froze. His face drained of color. You didn't, he muttered, his voice cracking. I did, she replied coldly. You're not untouchable anymore. The distant sound of sirens wailed in the night, growing louder. Red and blue lights flashed outside the broken windows. Richard's eyes darted toward the door, desperate, calculating, but the fight was over. The police stormed in, guns raised, ordering everyone down. The two men in hoods dropped instantly, hands behind their heads. Richard, still frozen, tried to speak, but his words drowned under the officers' shouts as they tackled him to the ground, handcuffing him roughly. For the first time in my life, I saw fear in his eyes. As they dragged him past me, he locked his gaze on mine. This isn't the end, he hissed. Blood never forgets. But I didn't look away. For once, I wasn't the outsider, the disposable pawn, the girl on the margins. I was the one who had brought him down. When the sirens faded and the station grew quiet again, my mother wrapped her arms around me. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The tears streaming down her face mirrored mine. Finally, she whispered, "You're safe now. He can't hurt you anymore." I nodded, though deep inside, his words still echoed. Blood never forgets. Maybe he was right. Maybe the scars he left would never vanish. But as I stood there in my mother's embrace, I realized something else. I wasn't alone anymore. I wasn't an outsider. This Christmas, their secret hadn't destroyed me. It had destroyed them.
And it had set me free.